Ambassador Zathora floated in her water suit as she watched another star system die. Through the viewing screen of her ship, she could see the bright flashes where planets once existed. The Vrakthi swarm had consumed everything there. Every living thing, every building, every piece of metal and stone. All of it was gone, turned into more ships for the swarm. "How many more systems have we lost?" she asked her aide. 14 in the past month, came the reply. "The swarm moves faster than our fleets can respond. By the time we arrive, there is nothing left to save." Zaithora's tentacles curled with sadness. She was from the Valanathi, a people who lived in the oceans of their homeworld. Her species had been peaceful for thousands of years. So had the other 6 races in their confederation. They built beautiful cities, created art, and shared knowledge across the stars. War was something they read about in old history books. Now war had found them. The Vrakthi swarm was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They were not one species but many, all controlled by a single mind that spread across space like a disease. Their ships were not built but grown, made from the bones and flesh of conquered worlds. When the Confederation shot at them with energy weapons, the swarm ships adapted. When they used missiles, the creatures learned to eat the explosives and use them for fuel. Every battle made the swarm stronger. Every defeat taught them new ways to kill. "Ma'am, we have received another message from the Council," her aide said. "They want to know if you have made a decision about the Earth proposal." Zathora had been dreading this moment for weeks. The Confederation Council had run out of options. Their fleets were losing every fight. Their weapons were useless. Their allies were being consumed one by one. In their desperation, someone had suggested reaching out to a species the galaxy had ignored for centuries. Humans. Earth was a small blue planet on the edge of known space. Most civilized races considered humans to be savages. They fought constant wars among themselves. They used primitive weapons that threw pieces of metal at their enemies. They had barely learned to travel between stars when other races were building galactic empires. But Zathora had studied human history. What she found both horrified and fascinated her. Humans had fought wars that lasted decades. They had created weapons that could destroy entire planets. They had survived plagues, asteroid impacts, and climate disasters that would have ended other species. Most shocking of all, they had fought each other with such brutality that they had nearly driven themselves extinct multiple times. Yet somehow, they always survived. "Tell the Council I have made my decision," Zathora said. "Set course for Earth." The K'Ven journey took 3 weeks. As they traveled, more reports came in. The Kenthari homeworld had fallen. The crystalline cities of the Silinari were being consumed. The swarm was moving toward the core worlds now, where billions of innocent people lived and worked and raised their children. When Earth finally appeared on their screens, Zathora was surprised by how beautiful it looked. Blue oceans covered most of the surface with green and brown continents scattered between white clouds. It looked peaceful. It was hard to believe that such a lovely world had produced the galaxy's most violent species. Human ships came out to meet them. They were ugly things made of gray metal and sharp angles. No art decorated their hulls. No beautiful curves showed the skill of their builders. They looked like what they were, tools made for fighting. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Sarah Chun. Of the United Earth Defense Force came a voice over the communication system. "State your business in Earth space." "I am Ambassador Zathora of the Kethmoran Confederation," she replied. "I come seeking audience with your leaders. We have an urgent matter to discuss." There was a long pause. When the human spoke again, her voice was different, more careful. "Ambassador, we were not aware that the Confederation recognized Earth as a sovereign territory." Zathora felt shame wash over her. The human was right. For centuries, the Confederation had treated Earth like it did not exist. They had made contact with hundreds of species across the galaxy, but they had ignored humans because they were too violent, too primitive, too dangerous to include in civilized society. "You are correct," Zathara admitted. "We have not treated your people fairly, but we come now in desperate need. Will you hear our plea?" Another pause. Then the human ships moved aside, creating a path toward the planet. "Follow us, Ambassador. The Council is waiting." The human capital city was called Geneva. It sat beside a large lake surrounded by mountains. From the air, it looked almost peaceful. But Zathara could see the defensive weapons hidden in those mountains. She could see the military bases scattered around the area. Even in their most beautiful places, humans prepared for war. The council chamber was simple compared to the grand halls where the Confederation met. The furniture was plain. The walls were bare, except for flags from different human nations. Around a large table sat representatives from every continent on Earth. Admiral Chun was a small woman with gray hair and scars on her hands. She did not look like a warrior, but her eyes were sharp and alert. When she spoke, the room fell silent. "Ambassador Zathara," she said, "we are honored by your visit, though surprised. What brings the Confederation to Earth after all these years?" Zathara activated her holographic display. Images filled the air above the table. Dead worlds, burning cities, swarm ships like massive insects feeding on the remains of civilizations. "We are dying," she said simply. "The Vranthi swarm has consumed 47 star systems in the past year. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons do not work. Our people are being eaten alive." The humans watched the images in silence. Some looked sick. Others looked angry. Admiral Chun's face showed no emotion at all. "Why come to us?" asked a man with dark skin and kind eyes. "Your Confederation has ships more advanced than ours. Weapons we can barely understand. If you cannot stop this swarm, what makes you think we can?" Zathara had practiced this speech for weeks, but now the words felt hollow in her throat. "Because you are different from us," she said. "We are builders, we are artists, we are scientists. But you—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You are survivors. You have fought wars we cannot imagine. You have created weapons we are afraid to dream of. You know how to destroy completely." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Admiral Chun leaned forward. "Show us everything," she said. "Every battle, every weapon you have tried, every tactic that has failed. If we are going to help you, we need to understand exactly what we are fighting." Zathara felt something she had not felt in months, hope, but as she began to share the Confederation's military files, she wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. The galaxy had spent centuries avoiding humans because they were too dangerous. Now she was about to give them detailed information about every weapon and defense system in known space. What if humanity decided that the Confederation was just another enemy to be conquered? What if, in saving them from the swarm, she had doomed them all to something even worse? But as another message arrived reporting the fall of the Therinian colonies, Zathara pushed those fears aside. The swarm would destroy everything if they were not stopped. Whatever humans might do later, it could not be worse than total extinction. "We begged for help," she whispered to herself as the data transfer began. "Now we can only pray we have not awakened something more dangerous than what we fight." 3 days after the meeting with the Earth Council, Admiral Chun contacted Zathara with news that made her heart skip several beats. "We accept your request for military assistance," the human admiral said through the communication screen. "But first, you need to see what you are asking us to bring to this war." Zathara followed Chun through the underground military complex beneath Geneva. The hallways were lined with thick metal walls and heavy doors marked with symbols she did not recognize. Human soldiers stood guard at every checkpoint, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. "Ambassador," Chun said as they walked, "your people fight wars to protect life. You use weapons designed to disable ships and capture enemies alive. You follow rules about what targets are acceptable and which ones are not." "Of course," Zythera replied. "War should have limits. Even enemies deserve some mercy." Chun stopped walking and turned to face her. "Humans do not fight that kind of war. When we go to battle, we fight to make sure our enemy can never threaten anyone ever again. We call it total war. Once you see what that means, you may decide you do not want our help after all." They entered a vast chamber filled with displays showing weapons and vehicles. Zythera recognized some of them from human historical records, but many were completely new. Chun began the tour at a wall covered with images of missiles. "These are nuclear weapons," Sheen explained. "Each one can destroy an entire city. We have bigger ones that can crack continents. We also have smaller ones that fit inside bullets." She moved to the next display. "These are antimatter bombs. One the size of your fist could turn your entire ship into energy." Zythera stared at the displays in horror. The Confederation had banned such weapons thousands of years ago. Even their oldest military records did not show anything so destructive. "Why do you need weapons like this?" she asked. "Because sometimes the only way to stop evil is to destroy it completely," Chun replied. "Your swarm adapts to every weapon you use against it, right? These weapons do not give it time to adapt. They destroy everything in seconds." They moved deeper into the complex. The next chamber was filled with biological warfare equipment. Scientists in protective suits worked behind thick glass walls, handling containers marked with symbols that made Zythera feel sick just looking at them. "We have studied the data you gave us about the swarm," Chun said. "Their greatest strength is also their weakness. They share one mind across billions of creatures. We can create diseases that attack that shared consciousness. Viruses that make them forget how to work together. Chemicals that turn their own biology against them. You would use biological weapons?" Zythera asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Against an enemy that eats entire worlds?" Chun nodded. Without hesitation, the tour continued for hours. Chun showed her ships designed to ram into enemy vessels and explode. Soldiers trained to fight in the vacuum of space using nothing but knives and axes, weapons that could make stars go supernova. Plans for turning entire planets into bombs. With each new display, Zythera felt more afraid. Not of the swarm, but of the ally she had brought to fight it. "There is one more thing you need to see," Chun said as they reached the final chamber. Inside, human officers sat around a table covered with star charts. They were planning something that made Zythera's tentacles curl with terror. "If conventional weapons fail," Chun explained, "we have developed what we call the Thanatos Protocol. We can build quantum viruses that attack the swarm's shared consciousness. Instead of killing them, we would force each creature to become an individual. Billions of minds that have never been alone would suddenly be trapped in separate bodies, unable to share thoughts or feelings. That would drive them insane," Zythera said. "Yes," Chun agreed. "It would be a fate worse than death for a species that has always been united. They would spend the rest of their lives in complete isolation, knowing they could never return to what they once were." Zythera backed away from the table. "You cannot be serious. That is not war. That is torture on a scale beyond imagination." Chun's expression did not change. "The swarm has eaten 47 star systems full of innocent people. Children, artists, teachers, families. They consumed them all to feed their endless hunger. If psychological warfare can stop them from doing that to anyone else, then we will use it." "But the moral cost," Zythera protested. "How can you live with yourselves after inflicting such suffering?" For the first time during the tour, Chun smiled. It was not a happy expression. Ambassador, humans have been living with moral costs for thousands of years. We have done terrible things to survive. We have made choices that haunt our dreams, but we are still here. Our children are still alive. Our worlds are still free. She gestured to the star charts. Your people are peaceful and beautiful and noble, but when monsters come to eat the galaxy, you need other monsters to fight them. Zythera felt sick. Everything about human warfare went against every principle the Confederation held sacred. They showed no mercy. They followed no rules. They were willing to inflict suffering beyond imagination to achieve victory, but they were also willing to face an enemy that had destroyed every fleet sent against it. There is something else you should know, Chun said. Once we deploy these weapons, there is no going back. The galaxy will see what humans are capable of. Some of your people may decide that we are more dangerous than the swarm. Are you? Zythera asked. Chun considered the question for a long moment. We could be, if someone gave us a reason. That is why we stayed isolated for so long. That is why your Confederation avoided us. You were right to be afraid. Then why help us at all? Because right now, the swarm is the bigger threat. And because your people asked for help. Humans do not abandon allies, even allies who ignored us for centuries. Zythera looked around the chamber one more time. She saw weapons that could destroy stars. Plans for psychological warfare that would drive enemies insane. Soldiers trained to fight with a brutality that civilized species had forgotten was possible. She thought of her homeworld's crystal cities beneath the waves. She thought of Velanathi children playing in coral gardens. She thought of all the species in the Confederation who had never known real war, who believed that evil could be defeated with noble intentions and careful planning. The swarm was coming for all of them. How long do you need to prepare? She asked. We have been preparing for this kind of war our entire history, Chun replied. Our fleets can be ready to deploy in 72 hours. And the other weapons? The biological viruses? The psychological warfare? Those take more time. But we will have them ready if conventional methods fail. Chun paused. Are you sure about this, Ambassador? Once we start, we cannot stop halfway. Human warfare is not something you can control or direct. We fight to win completely. Zythera closed her eyes and thought of the last message from the Therenian colonies. Millions of voices crying for help as the swarm consumed their world. Then silence. Yes, she said. We need you to fight. All of you, with everything you have. Chun nodded. Then we will answer your call. We will bring fire and steel to this war. The swarm will learn what it means to face humanity in battle. As they left the complex, Zythera wondered if she had just saved the galaxy or doomed it. Human weapons could destroy the swarm, but they could also destroy everything else. In begging for humanity's help, she may have unleashed something that would change the galaxy forever, but the alternative was extinction for everyone. Sometimes, she realized salvation came with claws and teeth. The human fleet arrived at the Thyros system like a pack of metal wolves. Zythera watched from the bridge of her diplomatic ship as 73 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They looked nothing like the elegant vessels of the Confederation. These ships were built for one purpose only, to kill. Swarm bioships detected, reported the sensor officer. 37 large vessels currently feeding on the remains of Thyros. Prime, they appear to be harvesting the planet's core metals. Zythera's heart sank as she looked at the tactical display. What had once been the beautiful crystal homeworld of the Cylinary was now a broken shell of rock and metal. The swarm ships hung around it like massive insects, their organic hulls pulsing as they absorbed the planet's resources. She expected Admiral Chun to call for a tactical meeting. The Confederation always studied enemy positions for days before attacking. They made careful plans to minimize casualties on both sides. They followed the ancient codes of honorable warfare. Instead, Chun's voice crackled over the communication system with a simple command. All ships, attack formation. Target the largest bioship first. Show them what human firepower looks like. The human fleet moved forward without hesitation. Zethara gasped as she watched the lead ships accelerate directly toward the swarm. Vessels. They were not trying to outmaneuver the enemy or find weak points in their defenses. They were charging straight into battle like ancient warriors with swords and spears. Admiral Chun, Zethara called over the communication channel. Should we not study their formation first? Plan our approach? Ambassador, Chun replied, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Humans have one rule in battle. Hit first, hit hard, and keep hitting until nothing is left to hit back. The first human missile struck the largest swarm ship before it could react. But these were not the energy weapons the Confederation used. These were nuclear warheads that tore through the bioship's hull like it was made of paper. The creature ship writhed in space as fire consumed its living tissue. More missiles followed. Antimatter bombs that turned sections of swarm vessels into pure energy. Kinetic rounds that punched holes through multiple ships at once. The humans attacked with weapons the Confederation had banned centuries ago. Weapons designed not to disable, but to destroy completely. The swarm began to adapt, just as they always did. Their ships started growing thicker armor where the missiles hit. Their weapons began targeting the human projectiles before they could reach their hulls. Zethara had seen this pattern before. In a few minutes, the swarm would be immune to everything the humans could throw at them. That was when the human ships did something that made Zethara's blood freeze. 3 of the smaller human vessels broke formation and flew directly at the Thifley, largest swarm ship. They were not trying to attack it from a safe distance. They were going to ram it. What are they doing? She whispered. Suicide run, Chun answered matter-of-factly. Sometimes the best way to kill something big is to get inside it and blow up. The first human ship smashed through the swarm vessel's outer hull and disappeared inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire bioship exploded from within, its living tissue burning in space like a massive torch. The other 2 human ships followed, each one destroying another swarm vessel by sacrificing itself. They killed themselves, Zethara said, unable to believe what she had witnessed. They died for their species, Chun corrected. Every human understands that some things are worth dying for. The survival of Earth, the protection of innocent people, the chance to hurt an enemy so badly that they think twice about fighting. US again. The swarm began to retreat, pulling back from the human fleet, but the humans did not let them go. More ships moved forward, launching boarding pods at the fleeing bioships. Zethara watched in horror as human soldiers in powered armor smashed through swarm hulls and began fighting hand-to-hand inside the living vessels. Why are they boarding the ships? She asked. Your missiles are working. Why risk your soldiers? Chun's answer chilled her to the bone. Because we need to teach the swarm something they have never learned before. Fear. The camera feeds from inside the swarm ships showed scenes that would haunt Zethara for the rest of her life. Human soldiers fought swarm creatures with weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum pain and terror rather than quick death. Flamethrowers that burned the living ship's tissue. Acid weapons that dissolved swarm warriors slowly. Chainsaw weapons that cut through enemies piece by piece. When their advanced weapons stopped working, the humans switched to simpler tools, axes, hammers, their own armored fists. They fought with a savagery that was both magnificent and terrifying to watch. The swarm creatures are trying to adapt to our weapons, reported one of the boarding team leaders over the communication channel. But they cannot adapt to raw human anger. One group of human soldiers became trapped when a swarm ship's living walls began to close around them. Instead of calling for rescue, They overloaded their reactor and turned their entire section of the ship into a bomb. The explosion tore the bioship in half and killed thousands of swarm creatures. "Admiral," Zathora said, her voice shaking, "your people are fighting like they want to die." "No, Ambassador," Chun replied. "We are fighting like we want to live, and we want our children to live. And we want every innocent person in this galaxy to live. The swarm wants to eat everything. We want to make sure they choke on us." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, every swarm ship in the system was either destroyed or fleeing toward deep space. The humans had lost 12 vessels and over 3,000 soldiers. They celebrated the victory like it had cost them nothing. Captain Marcus Torres, the leader of one of the boarding teams, appeared on Zathora's screen. His armor was covered in burns and what looked like alien blood. Behind him, his soldiers were collecting samples from dead swarm creatures. "Ambassador," he said with a grin that showed too many teeth, "my science team wants to study these bioships. We think we can turn their own biology against them. Create weapons that will make them eat themselves from the inside out." "That is monstrous," Zathora said. "Yeah," Torres agreed cheerfully. "But it will work. And when word spreads about what happened here, other swarm fleets will think twice before attacking civilian targets." As the human fleet prepared to move to the next system, Zathora received a message from the Confederation Council. They had monitored the entire battle and were both grateful and terrified by what they had seen. "The humans saved the Silinari. Survivors," the message read. "But their methods of warfare violate every treaty we have signed about the conduct of civilized species. They fight like demons possessed by fury. They show no mercy to enemies and no concern for their own lives. We are beginning to wonder if we have made a terrible mistake." Zathora looked out at the human ships as they formed up for the next jump. Their hulls were scarred from battle, but their crews were already preparing for the next fight. They had not just defeated the swarm, they had done something no other species had managed to do. They had made the swarm afraid, but watching them fight had changed something in Zathora's mind. She had asked for warriors to save her people. She had not realized she was asking for something that might be more dangerous than the enemy they fought. Humans did not just win battles. They destroyed their enemies so completely that other enemies would think twice about challenging them. They turned warfare into something that was both art and nightmare. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Zathora wondered if the galaxy would survive its salvation. The swarm could be defeated. She was certain of that now. But what would the galaxy look like when the only thing standing between civilization and chaos was a species that fought wars like the humans did? She was beginning to understand that some victories came with a price that was only paid later. The Confederation had been saved today. But tomorrow, they would have to live in a galaxy where everyone knew that humanity existed and everyone had seen what humans could do when they went to war. That knowledge would change everything. The war had been going on for 3 months when the swarm did something that changed everything. They started learning faster than anyone thought possible. Admiral Chun stood in the command center of her flagship, watching reports pour in from battles across the galaxy. The humans had won every single fight, but each victory was getting harder. The swarm was adapting to human weapons with frightening speed. "Show me the footage from the Kepler 7 engagement," Chun ordered. The holographic display filled with images from the latest battle. Human nuclear missiles struck swarm bioships and barely scratched their hulls. The creatures had grown thick armor that could absorb the atomic fire. Kinetic rounds bounced off their modified skin. Even the suicide ships that had worked so well before were being caught by new swarm defensive systems. "They are learning from every attack," reported Captain Torres. "Every weapon we use, every tactic we try, they counter it within days. We are running out of conventional options, Admiral." Zathora watched from her position on the bridge. Over the past months, She had seen humanity fight with incredible courage and terrible brutality. But now she could see something new in their eyes, something that made her more afraid than she had ever been. Desperation. "Admiral Chun," she said carefully, "perhaps it is time to consider negotiating with the swarm. If they are becoming immune to our weapons, ... Chun turned to look at her with eyes that seemed to burn with cold fire. "Ambassador, the swarm has eaten the equivalent of Earth's entire population 50 times over. They do not negotiate. They consume, and humans do not surrender. Then what? Do you propose?" Chun walked to another display showing a star map of human space. "We have been fighting this war with weapons the galaxy considers acceptable. Nuclear bombs, kinetic rounds, direct combat. But the swarm is forcing us to escalate." She pressed a button and new information appeared on the screen. Zathura read the technical data and felt her heart skip beats. "Psychological warfare protocols," Chun explained. "We have been studying the swarm's hive mind for months. Our scientists have found a way to attack their shared consciousness directly." Dr. Rebecca Hassan, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, stepped forward. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but her words made Zathura feel sick. "The swarm's greatest strength is their unity," Hassan explained. "Billions of creatures sharing thoughts and experiences. They have never known loneliness or isolation. To them, individual consciousness would be like being buried alive forever." "What are you suggesting?" Zathura asked, though she feared she already knew. "We broadcast human memories directly into their hive mind," Hassan continued. "Not just any memories, our worst ones. Every war crime, every act of cruelty, every moment of despair and madness from human history. We show them what it means to be alone, afraid, and desperate." Chun activated another display. Phase 2 involves quantum viruses that attack the connections between swarm minds. We can force individual consciousness on creatures that have never experienced it. Imagine billions of beings suddenly cut off from everything they have ever known. Zathura backed away from the displays. "That is not warfare. That is torture beyond imagination." "Yes," Chun agreed. "It is also the only thing that will work." Captain Torres pulled up combat footage from the latest battles. "Look at this. Ambassador, the swarm is not just adapting to our weapons. They are studying our tactics, learning our strategies. In 2 more months, they will be immune to everything we have. Then they will come for Earth." The images showed swarm ships using modified versions of human attack patterns, Bale vessels that could ram through human defenses, creatures that had learned to use suicide tactics against human fleets. The enemy was becoming more like humanity with each battle. "They are copying us," Torres said, "taking our own methods and using them against us. But there's one thing they cannot copy." "What?" Zathura asked. "Human insanity," Torres replied with a smile that was not pleasant to look at. "Our willingness to destroy everything, including ourselves, to stop an enemy. They understand cooperation and adaptation. They do not understand spite." Chun activated the final display. It showed Earth's entire military fleet, but now the ships looked different, darker, more dangerous. "We have modified every vessel in the human navy," Chun explained. "If conventional weapons fail, every ship can become a weapon of psychological warfare. We will broadcast the worst moments of human history directly into swarm minds. We will show them recordings of our genocides, our tortures, our wars where we turned entire planets into graveyards." "Why would you do such a thing?" Zathura whispered. "Because humans have lived through all of that and survived," Chun replied. "We have experienced every form of suffering and come out stronger. The swarm has never known true pain or real fear. When they experience what we have experienced, they will break." Dr. Hassan pulled up psychological profiles of different swarm creatures. We have identified the core components of their hive mind, the queen entities that coordinate their fleets. If we can force individual consciousness on just one of them, the shock will ripple through their entire network. The plan was horrifying in its simplicity. Human ships would get close to major swarm fleets and then broadcast pure, psychological poison directly into their shared minds. Memories of human children being murdered. Records of humans torturing each other during wars. The complete history of every atrocity humanity had ever committed against itself. The swarm will experience every moment of human suffering simultaneously. Hassan explained. Billions of minds that have never known individual pain will suddenly feel the weight of our entire species' trauma. It will drive them insane. And if it does not work? Zaithara asked. Chun's expression became very serious. Then we activate the Thanatos protocol. We use quantum viruses to permanently separate every swarm creature from the hive mind. They will spend the rest of their lives alone in their own minds, unable to reconnect with their species. For creatures that have always been united, it will be a fate worse than death. Zaithara stared at the humans around her. 3 months of fighting the swarm had changed them. They had started the war as warriors. Now they were becoming something else, something that frightened her more than the enemy they fought. You are talking about inflicting suffering on a scale that has never existed before, she said. Billions of conscious beings driven mad by forced isolation. How can you even consider such a thing? Because they started this war, Torres replied. They chose to eat innocent people. They decided to consume entire worlds. We did not ask for this fight, but we will finish it. Chun walked to the viewing screen and looked out at the stars. Ambassador, your people asked us to save the galaxy from the swarm. We said yes. But we never promised to do it in a way that would let you sleep peacefully afterward. A communication alert sounded. The sensor officer reported a massive swarm. Fleet heading toward the Confederation core worlds. 300 bioships carrying enough creatures to consume every civilized planet in the galaxy. They are making their final push, Chun said. Everything they have learned, every adaptation they have made, they are bringing it all to bear on one decisive battle. She turned to face her crew. This is what we trained for. This is why Earth spent thousands of years learning how to fight wars that other species could not imagine. The swarm thinks they have adapted to human warfare. They are about to learn that they have only seen the beginning. As the human fleet prepared for the final battle, Zaithara sent a message to the Confederation Council. She tried to find words to explain what humanity was about to do, but every sentence seemed inadequate. Finally, she wrote simply, "The humans are about to save us. I pray that we survive our salvation." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying weapons that could destroy not just the swarm's bodies, but their minds and souls. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what total war really meant, and Zaithara feared that after this battle, the universe would never be the same again. The final battle began in the Arcturus system, where the Confederation had built their greatest shipyards. 300 swarm bioships moved through space like a living storm, their hulls pulsing with the absorbed energy of a dozen consumed worlds. They had come to finish what they started, to eat the heart of galactic civilization. Admiral Chun watched from her flagship as the enemy fleet approached. The humans had only 70 ships left, but each one now carried weapons that no civilized species had ever imagined using. All ships, prepare for psychological warfare deployment, Chun ordered. Remember, we are not just fighting for victory. We are fighting to make sure this enemy never threatens anyone again. Zaithara floated in her water suit on the bridge, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. The swarm ships were larger than before, their biohulls modified with technology stolen from human designs. They had learned everything about conventional warfare. But they were about to discover that humans had barely begun to show them what war really meant. "Swarm fleet is moving into attack formation," reported the sensor officer. "They are using the ramming tactics they learned from us." "Let them come," Chun replied. "Torres, begin the first phase." Captain Torres activated a system that filled the bridge with an eerie red light, broadcasting Phase 1 psychological payload. All human ships are now transmitting our historical archives directly into swarm neural networks. What happened next would be remembered as the moment when warfare itself changed forever. The swarm ships suddenly stopped moving. They're coordinated. Attack formation broke apart as individual biovessels began flying in random directions. Some started attacking each other. Others simply drifted through space as if their crews had forgotten how to function. What is happening to them? Zethara asked. Dr. Hassan monitored the psychological warfare systems from her station. "We are showing them human history, Ambassador. Every war we have fought. Every atrocity we have committed. Every moment of suffering our species has endured. The swarm has never experienced individual pain or fear. Their hive mind is trying to process thousands of years of human trauma all at once." On the main screen, they could see swarm creatures abandoning their ships and floating in space. Some were attacking their own fleet mates. Others had curled into tight balls and stopped moving entirely. The unified force that had consumed 47 star systems was falling apart, but the largest swarm ships began to adapt. Their bio-hulls sprouted new organs that filtered out the human transmissions. Within minutes, the queen ships had isolated themselves from the psychological attacks and were coordinating a counterattack. "They are learning to block our broadcasts," Torres reported. "The smaller ships are still affected, but the big ones are adapting." Chun nodded as if she had expected this. Phase 2. Deploy the Thanatos Protocol. A new type of missile launched from every human ship. These were not explosive weapons, but quantum viruses designed to attack the connections between swarm minds. As they struck the bioships, something terrible began to happen. Individual swarm creatures started screaming. The sound came through the communication systems as the aliens experienced consciousness for the first time. Beings that had shared thoughts and feelings for millions of years were suddenly alone in their own minds. The terror of isolation drove them mad. "My God," Zethara whispered as she watched thousands of swarm creatures throw themselves out of their ships rather than endure the horror of individual existence. But even this was not enough. The largest queen ships had learned to resist the quantum viruses. They began rebuilding their hive connections and rallying the surviving swarm forces. 3 massive biovessels, each the size of a small moon, moved toward the human fleet with weapons that glowed with stolen human technology. "Admiral," Torres called out, "the big ones are still functional. They have adapted to everything we have thrown at them." Chun smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Then it is time for Phase 3. She activated a system that made every human on the bridge stand straighter. Even Zethara could feel something change in the air around them. "All ships," Chun announced, "initiate final protocol. Show them what humans do when everything else fails." The human fleet began moving directly toward the 3 queen ships, but they were not attacking. They were broadcasting something new. "What are you sending them now?" Zethara asked. "The truth," Chun replied. "We are showing them exactly what humans are capable of when we have nothing left to lose." The transmissions contained records of humanity's darkest moments, but also something else. They showed human cities burning and humans rebuilding them. They showed plagues that killed millions and the survivors who refused to give up. They showed wars that should have ended humanity, but instead made them stronger. Most importantly, they showed humans choosing to sacrifice everything for their children and their future. The queen ships stopped advancing. For the first time since the war began, the swarm hesitated. "They are afraid," Hassan reported, studying the alien brain patterns. The hive mind is experiencing an emotion they have never felt before. They finally understand what it means to face an enemy that would rather die than surrender. Chun activated the final weapon. Every human ship in the fleet began to overload its reactors simultaneously. "What are you doing?" Zathura screamed. "Showing them the price of fighting humanity," Chun replied calmly. "If they want to consume the galaxy, they will have to do it knowing that humans exist. And humans will never stop fighting them." The message was clear. Humanity was willing to destroy their entire fleet and themselves, just to hurt the swarm. They would rather die than live in a galaxy ruled by creatures that ate innocent people. 3 Queen ships received this message and did something that shocked everyone watching. They retreated. The massive biovessels turned away from the human fleet and began moving toward the edge of the galaxy. The remaining swarm ships followed them, abandoning their conquest to flee from an enemy that had shown them something more terrifying than any weapon: the willingness to lose everything for principles. "Stand down, reactor overloads," Chun ordered. As the swarm fleet disappeared into deep space, all ships, mission accomplished. The bridge erupted in celebration, but Zathura felt no joy. She had watched humanity save the galaxy by becoming something that might be worse than what they fought. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what happens now? The galaxy has seen what humans can do. Some species will fear you more than they feared the swarm." Chun looked out at the stars where the enemy fleet had vanished. "Maybe they should fear us, Ambassador. Fear keeps people honest. Fear makes them think twice before starting wars. They cannot win. And if someone decides that humanity is too dangerous to exist," Chun's smile returned, cold and sharp, "then they will learn the same lesson the swarm learned today. Humans do not go quietly into the dark. We take our enemies with us." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy struggled to understand what had happened. The swarm was gone, fled to the empty spaces between galaxies where they could not threaten civilized worlds. But the price of victory had changed everything. Some Confederation species began developing weapons to defend against human psychological warfare. Others started building alliances to contain Earth's expansion. A few wise leaders understood that humanity had saved them all, but most focused on the terrifying methods used to achieve that salvation. Zathura returned to her homeworld and submitted her final report to the Confederation Council. Her words would be studied for generations to come. "We begged for help, and humanity answered with fire and steel. They gave us exactly what we asked for: salvation from extinction. They simply failed to mention that those capable of such salvation are also capable of being our extinction, should we ever give them cause. The galaxy is safe now. The swarm is gone. Our children will grow up in peace, but they will grow up knowing that somewhere among the stars, humanity waits, ready to answer the next desperate plea for help, but also ready to respond to any threat with weapons that can destroy not just bodies, but minds and souls. We asked for monsters to fight monsters. We got exactly what we requested. The galaxy will never be the same." Admiral Chun's final log entry was shorter, but no less memorable. Mission completed. Enemy defeated. Casualties acceptable. Earth's children are safe. The galaxy now knows what happens when you threaten innocent people while humans are watching. We came when they called for help. We fought their war with everything we had. We won. Now they fear us almost as much as they feared their enemy. Good. Fear keeps the peace better than any treaty. Humanity stands ready, always. The stars were quiet now, but everyone who looked up at them knew the truth. In the darkness between worlds, humanity waited with weapons that could crack planets and break minds. They were guardians and potential destroyers both. The galaxy was saved. Whether it was also doomed remained to be seen.